The air in the Dallas apartment lobby turned heavy, almost suffocating, when I finally said the words that had been burning in my chest for weeks. Family? I spat out, my voice trembling with rage but cutting like glass. You mean the same family that left me behind on the Hawaii vacation I paid $22,000 for? My parents' smug grins froze, draining from their faces like melting wax. My sister's lips twitched as if she was about to argue, but she couldn't. And just then, like a twist of fate, the landlord, Mr. Peterson, walked by and heard every single word. His eyebrows shot up, his gaze darting between me and my parents. Their little charade collapsed in an instant. For the first time in years, they looked powerless, exposed. And I felt justice rise inside me, sharp and sweet. That moment wasn't the beginning. It was the climax of a storm years in the making. To understand how we reached that lobby scene, you'd have to go back to the day I thought saving my family would finally save me. When I woke up that cool September morning, I still had family defined all wrong in my head. The Dallas skyline glinted through my bedroom window as I scrolled through. My phone, lingering over the confirmation email from Sunset Hawaii Tours. $22,000. The number stared back at me, representing nearly every penny I'd saved since my divorce from Eric 8 months ago. But it was worth it. The beachfront villa for 10 days, the private tour packages, the sunset dinner cruise, all of it carefully selected to create the perfect family healing experience. You're absolutely insane, Melissa had said over coffee yesterday, her eyes wide with disbelief. You know that, right? 22 grand for people who barely remembered your birthday last year? I stirred my latte, avoiding her gaze. Melissa had been my rock throughout the divorce. The one who'd held me when I found those text messages on Eric's phone. The one who'd helped me pack my things while he was at work with his 24-year-old assistant. She'd earned the right to be brutally honest, but I wasn't ready to hear it. They're my family, Mel. They're all I have left. She shook her head. No, honey. They're all you allow yourself to have left. There's a difference. I thought about her words as I got ready for work, applying concealer to hide the dark circles under my eyes. Marketing director at Thompson Media wasn't an easy job, especially not when you were rebuilding your life from scratch at 32. But the salary was good. Good enough to support not just me, but to help my parents with their mortgage payments when Dad lost his job, to buy Amanda that used Honda when she couldn't make rent, to cover the property taxes on their house when they just couldn't swing it this year. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Don't forget to email me the Hawaii itinerary, sweetie. So excited. I smiled, imagining us all on the beach. Mom and Dad looking relaxed for the first time in years. Amanda actually talking to me about something other than what she needed. Maybe we'd reconnect over Mai Tais at sunset, heal old wounds, become the close-knit family. I always pretended we were to colleagues and friends. It was worth every penny to fix what had been broken for so long, wasn't it? At work, I buried myself in campaign metrics and client calls, barely noticing when 6 o'clock came around. My assistant Tyler poked his head in my office. Burning the midnight oil again, Rachel? He asked, his lanky frame leaning against the doorway. I looked up, from my laptop. Just finishing the Johnson presentation. Don't want any surprises for tomorrow's meeting. Like the surprises you had with your ex? Tyler said, then immediately winced. Sorry, that was way out of line. I waved it off, though the comment stung. It's fine. Ancient history. It wasn't fine, and it wasn't ancient history, but I'd gotten good at pretending. Just like I'd gotten good at pretending my family appreciated everything I did for them. Maybe that should have been my first clue. On my drive home, I decided to call Mom to confirm the flight details for next week. We'd all be flying together from Dallas to Honolulu, and I wanted to make sure everyone had packed appropriately. The phone rang 4 times before she picked up. Hello? Hey, Mom. Just calling about next Tuesday's flight. Did Dad get his motion sickness pills? Remember what happened on the trip to Colorado? There was a strange pause on the line. Oh, honey. Her voice had that peculiar tone she used when she was about to deliver bad news. We already went last week, only for family. The words didn't register at first. I actually laughed, thinking she was joking. What? No, Mom, the trip is next week. I have the confirmations right here. Another pause, longer this time. In the background, I could hear my sister Amanda's voice and the clinking of dishes. Rachel, sweetie, we decided to move the trip up. Your father's blood pressure has been acting up, and the doctor said we shouldn't wait. My car drifted toward the shoulder of the highway before I jerked it back into the lane, earning an angry honk from the driver behind me. You went without me? My voice sounded so small, so pathetic, even to my own ears. To Hawaii? The trip I paid for? Now, don't be dramatic. We left you your portion of the refund on the villa. It's in your old checking account. My old checking account. The joint account I'd closed after finding out my parents had been borrowing from it for years without telling me. How much? I managed to ask. 2,000. We had to use some for extra expenses, you understand? 2,000. Out of 22,000. I felt like I was going to be sick. Rachel, are you still there? I was still there, but something inside me was gone. Something that had kept me tethered to the fantasy that my family valued me beyond what I could give them. I have to go, I whispered, ending the call. I pulled into a gas station parking lot, my hands shaking so badly I could barely put the car in park. Then I did something I hadn't done since the day I signed my divorce papers. I cried. Not the dignified, quiet tears of someone keeping it together, but the ugly, gasping sobs of someone whose last illusion had just been ripped away. Through the blur of tears, I scrolled through my phone to my photos. There they were. Instagram posts from my sister and parents. Photos of them on the beach, in the exact villa I'd booked, drinking from pineapples and posing under palm trees. Family time, the captions read. Best vacation ever. Nothing like quality time with the people who matter most. The people who matter most. Apparently, I wasn't one of them. I thought back to all the sacrifices I'd made. The therapy sessions I'd canceled because Dad needed dental work. The apartment upgrades I'd postponed because Amanda needed tuition money. The vacations I'd never taken because someone always needed something more important. I'd been their safety net for so long that I'd forgotten to build one for myself. And now I was in free fall, with no one to catch me. As night settled over Dallas, I sat in that gas station parking lot, scrolling through years of one-sided giving, and somewhere between the tears and the growing anger, a small voice inside me finally spoke up. Enough. It was time to redefine what family really meant. 3 days after discovering my family's Hawaiian betrayal, I was sitting at my kitchen island, surrounded by financial statements dating back 5 years. The evidence of my systematic exploitation was spread before me in black and white. Transfers, checks, loans that were never repaid, credit card statements showing purchases I'd never made. Jesus, Rachel, Melissa said, picking up a bank statement. $1,200 to Amanda Monroe on the same day she posted about her new designer bag? That's not helping family. That's being an ATM. I rubbed my temples, trying to quell the migraine that had been my constant companion since that phone call. I know how it looks. It looks like they've been bleeding you dry, Melissa said, her voice gentler now. She sat beside me, pushing a cup of tea into my hands. And the worst part is, I think you've known it all along. She wasn't wrong. Deep down, I'd always recognized the pattern. The way my parents' tone would shift when they needed something. Warmer, more affectionate. The way Amanda would suddenly remember my existence whenever her bank account dipped too low. The convenient emergencies that always seemed to align with my bonus schedule. But I'd been so desperate to belong, to feel needed, that I'd confused being used with being loved. What do you think they'll do when they realize the well has run dry? Melissa asked. I sipped my tea, the warmth doing little to thaw the cold realization settling in my chest. They'll try to turn it back on. As if on cue, my phone lit up with Amanda's name. I stared at it for a moment before answering on speaker. Hey, sis. Amanda's voice was honey sweet, the way it only got when she wanted something. How are you? I've been thinking about you. Have you? I kept my tone neutral, though my heart was pounding. Of course. Listen, I hate to ask, but there's a tiny situation with my rent. Just a small misunderstanding with the payment date. $2,000 should cover it, plus the late fee. I can pay you back when my commission comes through next month. Next month. Always next month. The same next month that never seemed to arrive. Melissa caught my eye across the island, her eyebrows raised in a silent, I told you so. That's funny timing, Amanda, I said carefully. I was just looking at my finances, trying to figure out where my $22,000 went. There was a beat of silence. Oh, that. Her voice lost its sugary edge. Mom said you were being difficult about that. Look, Dad needed that vacation for his health. You know that. And the designer bag you bought the day after you landed, was that for his health too? Another pause, longer this time. How did you... Instagram exists, Amanda. So do bank statements. Whatever. Are you going to help me or not? The landlord is threatening eviction. The old Rachel would have transferred the money immediately, desperate to keep the peace, to maintain the illusion of family harmony. The new Rachel, the one born in a gas station parking lot 3 days ago, took a deep breath. Only for family, remember? The silence on the other end was deafening. Then Amanda's voice returned, sharp as a blade. What is that supposed to mean? It means exactly what Mom told me about Hawaii. This help is only for family. And apparently, I don't qualify. You're being ridiculous. It was just a vacation. It was never just a vacation, Amanda. It was a pattern. One I'm breaking today. I ended the call before she could respond, my hands shaking but my resolve steady. Melissa was watching me, her expression a mixture of concern and pride. You okay? I nodded, though the truth was more complicated. I wasn't okay. I was grieving the family I thought I had, the love I thought was unconditional. But beneath the grief was something else, something that felt like the first fragile shoots of self-respect. I need to close all the accounts they have access to, I said, gathering the statements into a pile. Change my passwords, cancel the automatic transfers. And then what? Melissa asked. It was a good question. What do you do after you realize the people who were supposed to love you the most have been using you all along? How do you rebuild when the foundation you thought you were standing on turns out to be quicksand? Then I learn how to live for myself, I said, surprising myself with the conviction in my voice. For the first time in my adult life. The next morning, I walked into my bank and spent 2 hours with a personal banker named Stephanie, securing my financial independence. New accounts, new cards, new online banking credentials, a credit freeze to prevent anyone from opening accounts in my name. It felt like dismantling a life, but also like building one. You'd be surprised how often I do this, Stephanie said as she finalized the paperwork. Family. Financial abuse is more common than people think. Financial abuse. The term hit me like a physical blow. I'd never thought of it that way, but that's exactly what it had been. A slow, steady erosion of my resources, my boundaries, my sense of self. Will they be notified of these changes? I asked, suddenly anxious at the thought of confrontation. Stephanie shook her head. Not by us, but they'll figure it out the next time they try to access funds that aren't there anymore. That evening, as predicted, the calls began. First from Amanda, then from Mom, then from Dad, each more demanding than the last, each escalating in emotional manipulation. After everything we've done for you, how could you be so selfish? Your father might need another surgery. I thought family meant something to you? I let them all go to voicemail, each message a confirmation that I'd made the right choice. The real surprise came 2 days later, when they showed up at my apartment building. Not alone, but with a man in a suit who introduced himself as their attorney. They looked like strangers standing in my apartment hallway. These 3 people who shared my DNA but suddenly seemed like characters from a movie I'd watched long ago. My mother's platinum blonde hair was styled in her usual perfect waves. My father wore his important business navy suit, and Amanda stood slightly behind them, her expression a practiced mix of concern and disappointment. The man beside them, tall, bald, with severe glasses, extended a business card toward me. Ms. Monroe, I'm Lawrence Greenberg. I represent your family in this unfortunate matter. His voice was clipped, professional, empty of any real emotion. May we come in? This would be better discussed privately. I didn't take the card. There's nothing to discuss, and you're not coming in. My mother stepped forward, her hand dramatically pressed to her chest. Rachel, honey, we're worried about you. You're not acting like yourself. Actually, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice, I'm finally acting like myself. That's the problem, isn't it? My father cleared his throat, adopting the authoritative tone he used when he wanted to shut down any further conversation. Rachel Elizabeth Monroe, this has gone far enough. We've been patient with your emotional difficulties since the divorce, but this behavior crosses a line. Emotional difficulties? I repeated, an incredulous laugh escaping me. Is that what we're calling it when someone stops letting you steal from them? Mr. Greenberg stepped between us. Ms. Monroe, your family has documentation of the financial support they've provided you over the years. They're simply asking for reciprocity during their time of need, as any family would. I stared at him, then at them, the pieces suddenly clicking into place. You're actually trying to legally force me to keep giving you money. We're trying to help you understand your obligations, Amanda said, speaking for the first time. Her voice had that rehearsed quality, like she was reading from a script they'd prepared together. Family supports family. That's what you always said. The hallway seemed to narrow, the walls pressing in. These people, these strangers wearing my family's faces, had twisted every act of generosity, every sacrifice I'd made, into a debt they thought I owed them. "Let me be perfectly clear," I said, meeting each of their eyes in turn. "You have no legal claim to my money. Every cent I ever gave you was a gift, not a loan. And gifts, unlike family ties apparently, don't come with strings attached." My mother's face hardened, the mask of maternal concern slipping to reveal the calculation beneath. "We raised you, clothed you, put you through college. You did the legal minimum required of parents, and I've been paying you back tenfold since I got my first job at 17, I cut in. As for college, I worked 2 jobs and took out student loans that I just finished paying off last year while simultaneously covering Dad's medical bills and Amanda's car payments." Mr. Greenberg cleared his throat. "Ms. Monroe, if you continue to withhold financial support, my clients are prepared to take certain steps that might be unpleasant for all involved." "Are you threatening me?" The question came out calmer than I felt. "Simply stating facts. Your family is concerned about your mental stability, especially given your recent erratic financial decisions and the trauma of your divorce." My blood ran cold. They were going to try to declare me incompetent, to gain control of my finances under the guise of concern for my well-being. "You have exactly 30 seconds to leave before I call building security," I said, pulling out my phone. "And if any of you ever try to contact me again with these ridiculous demands, the next call will be to my lawyer." For a moment, no one moved. Then my father, his face flushed with an anger I recognized from childhood, grabbed my mother's arm. "She's not worth it. Let her live with her choices." They turned to leave, but Amanda lingered, her expression shifting to one I couldn't quite read. For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw something like regret in her eyes. "Enjoy paying your own rent," I said to her, the words sharper than I intended. Her face closed off again. "You'll regret this, Rachel. When you have no one left, you'll remember who your real family is." As they disappeared down the hallway, their threats hanging in the air like smoke, I slumped against my door. My hands were shaking, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I'd stood my ground, but the victory felt hollow, tainted by the knowledge that the people who should have loved me most had been plotting against me all along. Inside my apartment, I called Melissa, the words tumbling out between shallow breaths as I recounted what had just happened. "They brought a lawyer to your home?" Her voice rose with indignation. "That's next-level crazy, even for them." "They're not going to stop," I said, pacing my living room. "This is just the beginning." "Then we need to be ready," Melissa replied, her tone shifting to the focused determination I'd always admired about her. "My cousin Mark is an attorney, family law, but he'll know who to refer you to. And Rachel, you need to document everything from now on. Every call, every text, every ambush at your door. These people aren't your family anymore. They're potential litigants." Potential litigants. The phrase should have devastated me, but instead it clarified things. This wasn't about love or loyalty anymore, if it ever had been. This was about control, about money, about 3 people who viewed me as nothing more than a resource to be drained, until there was nothing left. Over the next week, their tactics escalated. Anonymous calls to my workplace, suggesting I was embezzling company funds. Concerned visits from distant relatives I barely knew, all spouting the same worried lines about my mental state and poor decisions. Even a surprise visit from a social worker who'd received an anonymous tip that I was exhibiting signs of financial self-harm. Each attack only strengthened my resolve. I met with Mark's recommended attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Vanessa Liu, who listened to my story without judgment, and then laid out a strategy so comprehensive it left me breathless. "First, we send a cease and desist letter," she explained, typing notes as we spoke. "Then we gather evidence of their financial exploitation. Banque. Records, text messages, witnesses who can attest to the pattern of behavior. If they're serious about taking this to court, we'll be ready to countersue for harassment and intentional infliction of emotional distress." "Can they really try to declare me incompetent?" I asked, the question that had been keeping me awake at night. Vanessa's gaze was steady, reassuring. "They can try, but a successful competency challenge requires substantial evidence of inability to manage one's affairs or understand consequences of decisions. From what you've told me, you're a marketing director with a stable job, a history of financial responsibility, including supporting them, and no diagnosed mental health conditions that would impair judgment. Their case would fall apart under the slightest scrutiny. For the first time since their visit, I felt like I could breathe again. So what do I do now? Live your life, she said simply. Go to work, see your friends, document everything, but don't let them see you falter. The best defense against people who want to portray you as unstable is to be visibly, undeniably stable. Following her advice wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I threw myself into my work, producing some of the most creative campaigns of my career. I started therapy, not because they'd pushed me to the brink, though they had, but because I deserved to heal from years of subtle manipulation and emotional neglect. I reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with during my marriage and subsequent divorce, rebuilding a support network that didn't demand my bank account. Information as the price of admission. And through it all, I documented. Every voicemail from my mother claiming I was breaking her heart, every text from Amanda oscillating between guilt trips and thinly veiled threats, every missed call from my father, followed inevitably by emails detailing their financial hardships that were somehow always my responsibility to fix. What I didn't expect was how their desperation would grow as their resources dwindled. Without my regular infusions of cash, the carefully constructed facade of middle-class stability they'd maintained began to crack. Bill collectors called. Credit cards were declined. The mortgage payment, which I'd been covering for years, went unpaid. And still, they refused to adapt. Instead of cutting expenses or finding additional income sources, they doubled down on their efforts to regain access to mine. The final straw came when I discovered they'd been contacting my friends, spinning tales of my supposed breakdown and begging for money to help poor Rachel get back on her feet. They have no shame, Melissa said when she forwarded me the tearful voicemail my mother had left her. Absolutely none. She was right. And as I listened to my mother's performance, the calculated breaks in her voice, the practiced pauses for dramatic effect, I realized something important. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just tired. Tired of the games, the manipulation, the endless emotional warfare. That's when I decided. Enough defense. It was time to reclaim my narrative. You look different, Tyler remarked one morning as I reviewed the quarterly marketing reports in the break room. I glanced up from my laptop. Different how? He tilted his head, considering. I don't know. Lighter, maybe? Like you put down something heavy. His observation was more accurate than he knew. In the 6 weeks since cutting financial ties with my family, I had indeed put down something heavy. The crushing weight of their expectations, their demands, their constant emotional taxation. The change wasn't just internal, it had manifested physically. My stress-induced insomnia had faded. The tension headaches that had been my constant companion for years now only visited occasionally. Even my wardrobe had evolved, shifting from the muted, professional armor I'd hidden behind to colors and styles that actually brought me joy. I guess I have, I replied, offering him a genuine smile. Sometimes the heaviest things we carry are invisible. Profound, he said with a mock bow. But seriously, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. The whole team has noticed the difference. You're more present, more decisive. He wasn't the only one who'd noticed. My boss had commented on my renewed creative energy during our last review. Clients were responding enthusiastically to my more innovative campaign pitches. Even my therapist had noted my progress, the way I was finally setting boundaries not just with my family, but in all areas of my life. The irony wasn't lost on me. By losing the people I thought I couldn't live without, I was finally learning how to truly live. But peace, I was discovering, is often just the eye of the storm. That evening, as I was leaving work, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your mother had to go to the ER. Heart palpitations from stress. Hope you're proud of yourself. I stood frozen in the parking garage, the message blurring before my eyes. It was a tactic straight from their playbook. Medical emergencies deployed like precision weapons whenever I showed signs of independence. In the past, I would have immediately called, panicked, offered money, anything to alleviate the crushing guilt. This time, I took a deep breath and called Melissa instead. They're saying Mom's in the hospital, I said when she answered. And you're wondering if it's true or just another manipulation, she finished for me. There was rustling on her end of the line. Give me the hospital name. I'll make some calls. 20 minutes later, she called back. No Patricia Monroe admitted to any ER in the Dallas metro area today, not even an outpatient visit. The relief I felt was quickly replaced by a cold clarity. They're getting desperate, which makes them dangerous, Melissa warned. Be careful, Rach. She was right to be concerned. As the weeks passed and their financial situation deteriorated further, my family's tactics grew increasingly erratic. Anonymous calls to my apartment building management, claiming I was running an illegal business from my unit. Concerned emails to my company's HR department, suggesting I was experiencing a mental health crisis that could impact my work performance. Even a bizarre encounter where a church group showed up at my door, explaining that a loving family member had requested a prayer intervention for my troubled soul. Through it all, I maintained what my therapist called strategic silence. I didn't engage, didn't defend, didn't explain. I simply documented each incident, forwarded the evidence to Vanessa, and continued living my life with a tranquility that seemed to infuriate them more than any response could have. "They're used to your reaction," Vanessa explained during one of our check-in calls. "Your anger, your hurt, your capitulation, these were all forms of engagement that validated their behavior. Your silence is the one response they have no strategy for." The wisdom of her approach was proven on a rainy Tuesday in November, when I received an official letter from the Dallas County Court. With trembling hands, I opened it, expecting the legal challenge my family had been threatening for months. Instead, I found a restraining order. Not against me, but filed by me. Against them. Confused, I called Vanessa immediately. "I didn't file for a restraining order." "No," she confirmed. "But someone did, using your personal information. Given the documentation we've been collecting, the judge was suspicious enough to contact me as your attorney of record. The application has been denied, and there's now an investigation into fraudulent legal filings under your name." I sat heavily on my couch, the letter crumpling in my grip. They forged my signature to file a restraining order against themselves? My guess? They were planning to violate it deliberately, then claim you were using our legal system to harass them. It would support their narrative that you're unstable and vindictive. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the underlying anger. "This crosses a line, Rachel. Filing false legal documents is a criminal offense. What do? We cooperate with the investigation, but otherwise we stay the course. Strategic silence. Let them dig their own hole deeper." That night, unable to sleep, I stood by my apartment window watching the Dallas skyline shimmer against the dark sky. The city looked peaceful from a distance, all glittering lights and geometric precision, with no hint of the messy human dramas unfolding within its grid of streets and buildings. How many other people were standing at their windows right now, grappling with betrayals by the very people who were supposed to love them most? How many others had discovered, as I had, that sometimes family is just a word, empty of meaning unless filled with actual love, respect, and care? My phone lit up with a text, and for a moment my heart raced with the conditioned anxiety of expecting another attack. But it was just Melissa. "Book club tomorrow night. We're reading that thriller you recommended. Don't forget the wine." I smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with blood relations and everything to do with chosen connections. Maybe that was the answer. Not replacing one family with another, but recognizing that genuine bonds aren't defined by obligation or genetics, but by mutual respect and voluntary care. As the weeks passed, I settled into a new normal. Work, therapy, friends, the occasional date that went nowhere special, but reminded me I was capable of feeling something beyond stress and obligation. I took a cooking class, started journaling, even booked a weekend trip to Austin just because I wanted to hear live music and eat ridiculously good tacos. Little by little, I was reclaiming pieces of myself that had been subsumed by years of caretaking and crisis management. I was discovering that I actually liked jazz, preferred spicy food, enjoyed hiking at dawn, simple preferences I'd never had the luxury of exploring when every spare moment and dollar was devoted to keeping my family afloat. Through it all, their attempts to regain control continued, but with decreasing frequency and effectiveness. Each failure seemed to diminish their energy for the fight, like boxers gradually realizing they were outmatched, until the day they showed up at my apartment building again, not with a lawyer this time, but with a desperation that would prove to be their undoing. I recognized their voices before I even stepped off the elevator. The same demanding tones, the same practiced indignation, now directed at Carlos, the front desk security guard who had become an unexpected ally over these difficult months. "Ma'am, as I've explained 3 times now, I cannot let you up without Ms. Monroe's permission, and she has specifically requested that you not be granted access," Carlos was saying, his voice professionally firm but with an underlying edge of frustration. "This is ridiculous." My mother's voice carried across the marble lobby. We're her parents. We have every right to see her. With all due respect, ma'am, being someone's parent doesn't override the building's security protocols or Ms. Monroe's wishes. I could have turned around, gone back upstairs, avoided the confrontation entirely. Part of me wanted to, but a stronger part, the part that had been finding its voice over these past few months, knew this moment was inevitable. If not today, then tomorrow. If not here, then somewhere else. So I stepped forward, my heels clicking against the marble floor, the sound causing all three of them to turn. Rachel! My mother's face transformed instantly, the anger melting into a mask of maternal concern so practiced it might have been convincing to someone who hadn't spent 3 decades learning to read the falsehood in her expressions. Oh, sweetheart, we've been so worried. My father stood slightly behind her, his posture stiff, eyes calculating as they assessed me. Amanda lingered by the entrance doors, her expression a mixture of defiance and something that might have been shame if I believed she was capable of it. Carlos, I said, keeping my voice steady, thank you for following protocol. I'll handle this. He nodded, his eyes communicating a silent offer of support if I needed it. I'll be right here, Ms. Monroe. I turned to face them, these 3 people who shared my blood but had proven themselves strangers to my heart. What do you want? To talk, my father said, stepping forward. Privately. That's not happening. The words came easily, without the guilt or hesitation that would have crippled me before. Say what you need to say right here, or leave. My mother glanced around the lobby, clearly displeased by the public setting. Rachel, be reasonable. This is a family matter. Family. The word tasted bitter on my tongue. Is that what we're calling this arrangement now? We know you're upset about Hawaii, Amanda interjected, moving closer. But this has gone on long. Enough. We need to resolve things like adults. Let me guess, I said, crossing my arms. You've been evicted. The slight widening of Amanda's eyes told me I'd hit the mark. It's not just that, my mother said quickly. Your father's medication costs $300 a month, I finished for her. A fraction of what you spent on that Hawaiian vacation I paid for. My father's face darkened. You're being extremely ungrateful. After everything we've done for you. What exactly have you done for me? I asked, genuinely curious to hear how they had rewritten our history in their minds. Besides taking and taking until there was nothing left to give? We raised you, my mother hissed, stepping closer. We put clothes on your back, food in your mouth. You did the legal minimum required of parents, I interrupted, echoing the words I'd spoken weeks ago. And I've been paying you back with interest since I was 17. We were there for you after the divorce, Amanda said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. When you were a complete mess, who listened to you cry for hours? Who helped you move into this overpriced apartment? I almost laughed at the audacity of her revisionist history. Melissa helped me move. You showed up for half an hour, complained about the weight of exactly 2 boxes, then left to meet friends for drinks. As for listening to me cry, that never happened. Not once. You called to ask for rent money the day after I signed the divorce papers. Amanda flushed, glancing away. My father stepped forward, his voice dropping to that authoritative tone that had intimidated me for so many years. Enough games, Rachel. We know you have the money. Your lease on this place alone proves that. You need to start supporting this family again. Or what? I asked, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. Or we'll be forced to take more drastic measures, he replied, the threat hanging between us. I looked at each of them in turn. These people who had taken my love, my loyalty, my financial support, and still stood here demanding more. And suddenly, I was no longer afraid. I was no longer hurt. I was just done. No, I said simply. No? My mother repeated as if I'd spoken in a foreign language. No, I confirmed. No more money, no more support, no more family, if this is what family means to you. You can't just decide that, Amanda said, incredulous. Actually, I can, and I have. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. Let me be perfectly clear. If you continue to harass me, if you make one more false report, file one more fraudulent legal document, or spread one more lie about my mental state, I will take every shred of evidence I've been collecting and press charges for harassment, fraud, and defamation. My father's face flushed with anger. You wouldn't dare. Try me. The 2 words hung in the air between us, a challenge I would have never dared issue before. For a moment, no one spoke. Then my mother's expression shifted, the mask of concern falling away to reveal the calculation beneath. You know what? Keep your money. But remember this moment, Rachel Elizabeth. Remember it when you're all alone with no one who cares about you. When you're old and sick with no family to help you. This is the choice you made. No, I corrected her gently. This is the choice you made. Every time you took without giving back. Every time you used me instead of loving me. Every time you treated me like an ATM instead of a daughter. Her mouth opened, then closed. No ready script available for this scenario. We're leaving, my father announced, grabbing my mother's arm. Come on, Patricia. Amanda. Amanda hesitated, something flickering across her face that might have been regret. For a brief moment, I glimpsed the little sister I had once protected from playground bullies, the girl who had once looked up to me before our parents taught her that I was more valuable as a resource than as a sister. Amanda? My father's voice hardened. She looked at me one last time, then turned to follow them. I watched them go, these three people who had defined my sense of obligation for so long. As the lobby doors closed behind them, I expected to feel something momentous, grief or triumph or vindication. Instead, there was only a quiet certainty that I had finally done the right thing. Not just for my bank account, but for my soul. Carlos approached carefully. You okay, Ms. Monroe? I nodded, surprised to find it was true. I am. Thank you for everything, Carlos. De nada, he replied with a gentle smile. Some family, they love you. Others, he shrugged expressively. They just love what you can give them. Knowing the difference, that's wisdom. As I rode the elevator back to my apartment, his words echoed in my mind. Knowing the difference. Perhaps that was the lesson in all of this. Learning to distinguish between relationships built on mutual respect and those built on exploitation. Between love that nurtures and dependency that drains. By the time I reached my door, I felt lighter than I had in years, as if I'd set down a burden I'd carried for so long I'd forgotten it wasn't part of me. For the first time since the Hawaii betrayal, I allowed myself to imagine a future unmarked by their demands and disappointments. A future shaped by my own desires rather than their expectations. I'd just begun to make dinner when my phone rang, Amanda's name lighting up the screen. My finger hovered over the decline button, then paused. What if this was different? What if she was calling to apologize, to break away from our parents' toxic pattern? Hope, that most tenacious of emotions, flickered briefly before common sense extinguished it. This wasn't a movie where family members had sudden epiphanies and changed overnight. This was real life, where patterns of behavior rarely changed without significant motivation and effort. I declined the call and blocked the number. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't to keep trying. Sometimes it's to stop. December arrived in Dallas with unseasonable warmth, as if the weather itself had decided to break with tradition. I was in the middle of a meeting with the creative team, discussing the spring campaign for our biggest client, when Tyler slipped me a note. Your sister in reception says it's an emergency. My first instinct was suspicion. Another manipulation, another attempt to breach the boundaries I'd finally established. But something in Tyler's expression gave me pause. He knew the situation, had been one of the few colleagues I'd trusted with an abbreviated version of what was happening. If he was passing me this note, the situation must have seemed genuinely urgent. Take 5. Everyone, I said, pushing back from the conference table. Get some coffee, stretch your legs. We'll reconvene in a bit. In the reception area, Amanda stood alone, looking smaller somehow than when I'd last seen her in the lobby confrontation 3 weeks ago. Her designer clothes had been replaced by jeans and a plain sweater. Her carefully maintained highlights were showing dark roots. But it was her expression that truly caught me off guard. A haunted, hollow look that seemed entirely foreign on her usually confident face. What are you doing here, Amanda? I asked, maintaining a safe distance. She glanced at the receptionist, then back to me. Can we talk somewhere private? Every instinct warned against it, but curiosity won out. 5 minutes, in the small conference room. I turned to the receptionist. Jenna, could you let Tyler know I'll need a few more minutes? Once inside the conference room, Amanda remained standing, her hands fidgeting with the strap of her purse. I left them, she blurted out. I blinked, trying to process the statement. Left who? Mom and Dad. She paced the small room, words tumbling out in a rush. After that day in your building, something just broke or clicked. I don't know. I started seeing it all differently. The way they talk about you when you're not there. The way they've always pitted us against each other. The way they taught me to use you instead of just being your sister. I said nothing, watching her carefully, looking for signs of deception. This wouldn't be the first time Amanda had performed contrition. To get what she wanted. She stopped pacing, meeting my gaze directly. I'm not asking for money. I know you won't believe that, and I don't blame you. I needed you to know that you were right. About everything. And I'm sorry it took me this long to see it. The silence stretched between us, filled with years of competition, resentment, and missed opportunities for genuine connection. Where are you staying? I finally asked. With a friend, temporarily. She looked down. I got a job waitressing. It's not much, but it's a start. I studied her, looking for the tells, the subtle shifts in expression that had always signaled when she was lying. But all I saw was exhaustion and what appeared to be genuine remorse. Why now, Amanda? After all these years, why the sudden epiphany? She sank into a chair, shoulders slumping. That day in your lobby, I saw something in you I've never seen before. Strength. Real strength, not the fake kind mom puts on for church or dad uses to bully people. You weren't angry or bitter or trying to hurt them back. You were just done, standing in your truth. She looked up, her eyes unexpectedly bright with tears. And I realized I've never done that, not once in my entire life. I've just been their puppet, playing whatever role would get me what I wanted in the moment. The words rang with an authenticity I hadn't heard from her since we were children. Still, years of manipulation had taught me caution. I appreciate you telling me this, I said carefully, but I need time to process it. Trust isn't rebuilt in a single conversation. She nodded quickly. I know, I'm not expecting anything, She stood abruptly. I should go. You have a meeting to get back to. As she headed for the door, I called after her. Amanda. She turned, hope flickering across her face. Leave your number with Jenna, a current one, not mom and dad's house. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even trust. But it was an opening. Small, cautious, but real. Later that evening, as I recounted the interaction to Melissa over dinner at her place, she listened with the careful attention of someone who knew exactly how much weight this carried. Do you believe her? She asked when I'd finished. I pushed my pasta around the plate, considering. I want to, but I've wanted to believe them before, and it's always ended the same way. This feels different though, doesn't it? Melissa pressed. Her showing up at your work, not asking for anything, actually acknowledging what happened. Maybe. I sipped my wine, the rich Cabernet warming me from within. Or maybe it's a more sophisticated strategy. Good cop, bad cop. They send Amanda with an olive branch while they prepare the next attack. Cynical, Melissa observed, but not unreasonable, given the history. We let the subject drop, moving on to lighter topics. Her new boyfriend, my upcoming presentation, the ridiculous holiday sweater Tyler had worn to work that day. But Amanda's visit lingered in my mind, a pebble disturbing the still surface of the peace I'd finally found. That night, I stared at her number in my contacts, my thumb hovering over the call button, before I finally set the phone aside. Trust, once broken, couldn't be repaired with a single conversation or a few tears, no matter how genuine they might have seemed. If Amanda was truly changing, that change would need to manifest in actions over time, not just words in a moment of vulnerability. The next week passed in a blur of deadlines and holiday preparations. The office was transformed. With tasteful decorations, client gifts arrived daily, and the annual company party loomed on the horizon. I threw myself into work, grateful for the distraction from the Amanda situation and the lingering questions it raised. Then, 3 days before Christmas, everything changed again. I was at my desk, reviewing the final numbers for the year-end report, when Jenna buzzed my intercom. Rachel, there's a Mr. Peterson here to see you. Says he's your landlord. A chill ran through me. Mr. Peterson, the building owner, rarely made personal appearances, preferring to let the management company handle day-to-day operations. If he was here at my workplace, something was very wrong. Send him in, please. The man who entered my office was exactly as I remembered him from our brief encounters. In the building, tall, silver-haired, with the confident bearing of someone used to commanding rooms much larger than this one. But today, his expression was grave, almost apologetic. Ms. Monroe, he began, accepting my gesture to take a seat across from me. I apologize for the intrusion, but I felt this matter required a personal touch. What matter is that, Mr. Peterson? He hesitated, then reached into his suit jacket, removing an envelope. Yesterday, Your parents arrived at the management office with what they claimed was a power of attorney document, granting them access to your apartment and authority to remove your belongings. My blood ran cold. That's impossible. I never signed any such document. I suspected as much. He placed the envelope on my desk. The signature looked questionable. I had my legal team review it immediately. It's a forgery, and not a particularly good one. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Thank you for bringing this to me directly. That's not all, I'm afraid. His expression darkened. When I refused to honor the document, they became unpleasant, made threats, claimed you were mentally unstable and that they were attempting to intervene before you harmed yourself. He met my gaze directly. Ms. Monroe, I don't know the details of your family situation, and I don't need to. But these people are escalating in concerning ways. My security team has been instructed not to allow them on the premises under any circumstances, but I strongly recommend you consider legal action. I nodded, a strange calm settling over me. This wasn't surprising anymore. It was just the next logical step in their desperate campaign to regain control. I appreciate the warning, Mr. Peterson, and your discretion. After he left, I sat motionless at my desk, the forged document sitting before me like a ticking bomb. This wasn't just harassment anymore. This was criminal. Forgery, attempted fraudulent entry, potentially even attempted theft if they had managed to gain access to my apartment. With steady hands, I called Vanessa Liu and explained the situation. This changes things, she said, her voice tight with controlled anger. They've crossed a clear legal line. We need to file a police report immediately, and I'll prepare a restraining order, a real one this time. Will that be enough? I asked, thinking of their determination, their seeming inability to accept that their control over me was gone. It's a start, she replied. But Rachel, you should prepare yourself. People this desperate rarely stop at legal boundaries. They'll either escalate further or find a new angle of attack. As I hung up, I realized she was right. This wasn't the end. In some ways, it wasn't even the middle. It was just another chapter in a story that had been unfolding my entire life. A story of control, manipulation, and the desperate lengths some people will go to maintain power over others. What I couldn't have known then was just how right Vanessa would prove to be, and how the final confrontation would play out not in courtrooms or police stations, but in the lobby of my apartment building, with an audience neither of us could have anticipated. The storm was building, and it was about to break. January in Dallas brought a bitter cold snap that matched my internal state. The police report had been filed, the restraining order granted, and my family had gone suspiciously quiet. According to Vanessa, this was often the calm before the storm, the period when those served with legal consequences either accepted defeat or planned their most desperate moves. Don't let your guard down, she warned during our weekly check-in call. This pattern of behavior doesn't typically resolve without some final confrontation. She was right, of course, though neither of us could have predicted exactly how that confrontation would unfold. On a frigid Tuesday evening, I returned home from work later than usual, having stayed to finalize a major campaign proposal. The lobby of my building was quiet, with only Carlos at the security desk and a few residents collecting mail from their boxes. I waved to him as I crossed to the elevators, my mind already shifting to the simple dinner I planned to make and the novel waiting on my nightstand. That's when I heard them, my parents' voices, raised in that familiar tone of entitled indignation. I turned to see them arguing with Carlos, my mother's manicured finger jabbing toward his chest while my father loomed over the desk with practiced intimidation. I've explained this multiple times, Carlos was saying, his voice professional but strained. There is a legal restraining order in place. You cannot go upstairs, and Ms. Monroe has left explicit instructions not to contact her. This is ridiculous, my mother's voice echoed through the marble lobby. We're her parents. We have every right to see her. Actually, you don't. The words left my mouth before I could reconsider. All three turned to face me, Carlos with visible relief, my parents with expressions that shifted rapidly from surprise to calculated determination. Rachel, my mother said, immediately, softening her voice to that cloying tone she used when attempting manipulation. Thank goodness. This man is being impossible. We've been trying to reach you for weeks. I stayed where I was, maintaining a safe distance. You've been trying to reach me despite a restraining order explicitly prohibiting contact. An order granted after you attempted to forge a power of attorney document to gain access to my apartment. My father stepped forward, his business face firmly in place. the expression he used when trying to close deals or intimidate opponents. That was a misunderstanding. We're here to resolve things amicably. There's nothing to resolve, I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. The relationship is over. The financial support is over. Everything is over. You don't mean that, my mother said, her tone sharpening. We're family. Family doesn't just end. Funny, that's not what you said when you excluded me from the Hawaii trip I paid for. I took a small step closer, feeling a strange calm wash over me. Remember your exact words? Only for family. Well, I've been thinking about that a lot, and you were right. Some things should be only for family. Respect, trust, love, and I've realized none of you qualify anymore. My father's face darkened with anger. After everything we've done for you? What exactly have you done for me? I interrupted, genuinely curious if he even knew. Name one thing you've done in the last decade that wasn't ultimately about what you could get from me. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, clearly searching for an example that wouldn't sound hollow. That's what I thought, I continued. You can't name anything because there isn't anything. Our entire relationship has been a one-way transaction for so long that you don't even remember what actual family is supposed to look like. My mother stepped closer, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. You ungrateful little... I wouldn't finish that sentence. If I were you, came a voice from behind me. I turned to see Mr. Peterson stepping out of the elevator, his expression stern as he surveyed the scene. Not if you want to avoid adding verbal assault to the list of charges Ms. Monroe could file against you. My parents faltered, clearly recognizing him as the building owner who had thwarted their forgery attempt. This doesn't concern you, father began. But Mr. Peterson cut him off with a raised hand. When you attempt to use forged documents to enter my building and harass one of my tenants, it very much concerns me. He moved to stand beside me, a gesture of solidarity that brought unexpected emotion to my throat. Carlos, please call the police. These individuals are in violation of a restraining order. That won't be necessary, my father said quickly, grabbing my mother's arm. We're leaving. But my mother wasn't ready to concede. She jerked her arm away, her carefully maintained composure finally cracking to reveal the raw entitlement beneath. Family? She spat, her voice rising. You mean the same family that left me behind on the Hawaii vacation I paid $22,000 for? My words from months ago, thrown back at me as a weapon. But they had no power anymore. I simply nodded. Yes, exactly. The family that took a vacation I paid for without me. The family that's been treating me like an ATM for years. The family that tried to have me declared mentally incompetent when I stopped giving you money. That family. The lobby had grown silent. The few residents who had been collecting. Mail now frozen in place. Unwitting witnesses to this final unraveling. My mother seemed to register the audience suddenly, her eyes darting around as she realized how exposed she was. You have no idea what you're talking about, she hissed, but her voice lacked conviction. That's when Mr. Peterson spoke again, his eyebrows raised in dawning comprehension. Wait a minute. Hawaii? You're the parents who went on that luxury vacation your daughter paid for and left her behind? He looked between us, piecing it together. And now you're here demanding money from her again? My mother's face paled as she realized her mistake. My father's expression hardened as he grabbed her arm more forcefully. We're leaving. Now. Yes, you are, Mr. Peterson confirmed. And if you ever return to this building or attempt to contact Ms. Monroe again, I will personally testify in court about what I've witnessed here today. For the first time in my memory, my parents looked truly powerless. The masks of parental authority, of righteous indignation, of familial entitlement, all stripped away to reveal the simple truth. They were just people who had been exploiting someone who loved them. And now, that exploitation had been exposed for what it was. As they turned to leave, Carlos caught my eye from the security desk and gave me a small, approving nod. Mr. Peterson placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. Are you all right, Ms. Monroe? I nodded, surprised to find it was true. Yes, I think I am. Good. He smiled slightly. You know, I have a daughter about your age. If she ever showed half the strength and dignity I've seen from you throughout this ordeal, I'd be the proudest father alive. He glanced toward the doors my parents had just exited through. Some people don't deserve the children they have. His words hit me with unexpected force, validating something I'd been trying to believe for months, that the failure in this relationship wasn't mine, that I hadn't been unlovable or unworthy of genuine care, that the problem had always been them, not me. As I rode the elevator up to my apartment, I felt a strange lightness, as if some final weight had been lifted from my shoulders. The confrontation I'd been dreading for months had come and gone, and I was still standing. More than that, I was free. Inside my apartment, I kicked off my heels and poured a glass of wine, then curled up by the window that overlooked the city. The Dallas skyline glittered against the night sky. Thousands of lights representing thousands of lives, thousands of stories, thousands of families. Some bound by love, others by obligation, others by nothing more than shared DNA and expired expectations. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I heard what happened. I'm sorry. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. No pressure, no expectations. Just a sister, if you still want one. Amanda. I stared at the message for a long moment, memories flooding back. Amanda as a little girl, following me around with hero worship in her eyes. Amanda as a teenager, gradually coached by our parents to see me as a resource rather than a sister. Amanda in the conference room of my office looking lost and genuine for the first time in years. I didn't respond immediately. Trust once broken couldn't be repaired with a single text or a moment of solidarity. But for the first time, I allowed myself to consider the possibility that Amanda's journey might be different from our parents', that she might be capable of change in ways they had proven themselves not to be. That night, I slept more peacefully than I had in years, without the weight of impossible expectations pressing down on me. Whatever came next, whether it was rebuilding a relationship with Amanda on healthier terms or continuing to forge my path alone, I would face it on my terms, with my boundaries intact and my worth no longer tied to what I could give others. The family I had been born into might have failed me, but the family I was choosing, friends like Melissa, colleagues like Tyler, even unexpected allies like Carlos and Mr. Peterson, had shown me what genuine support looked like. And perhaps most importantly, I was learning to be family to myself, to treat myself with the same care, respect, and protection I had so freely given to others. As Dallas slept beneath a blanket of winter stars, I dreamed not of what I had lost, but of what I had finally found. The strength to stand in my truth, the courage to demand respect, and the wisdom to know that sometimes walking away is the only way to truly come home to yourself. Spring arrived in Dallas with a riot of bluebonnets and Indian paintbrush spreading across the highway medians. The renewal of the natural world mirrored my own internal rebirth, tentative at first, then increasingly confident as the days lengthened and warmed. In the 3 months since the lobby confrontation, my life had transformed in ways both subtle and profound. The constant anxiety that had been my companion for so long, the hypervigilance, the dread of my phone ringing, the flinch response to unexpected knocks on my door, had gradually faded, replaced by a calm certainty that I could handle whatever came next. Vanessa had called in February with news. My parents had moved to Arizona, apparently taking early retirement after my father's company had restructured his position. The restraining order remained in effect, but the physical distance provided an additional layer of security, a buffer against further confrontations. "They're done," she'd said with professional certainty. People like that don't change their nature, but they do recognize when a source has been permanently cut off. They'll find someone else to exploit. I felt a momentary pang at that, not for myself, but for whoever might become their next target. Then I reminded myself that their choices weren't my responsibility anymore. I had spent enough years trying to fill their bottomless needs. Those days were over. What surprised me most about this new chapter of my life was the space that opened up, not just in my bank account, though the financial relief was undeniable, but in my mind and heart. Without the constant drain of their demands and manipulations, I discovered energy for pursuits I'd long abandoned. The photography class I'd signed up for in college but dropped when Dad's emergency dental work came up. The book club I'd joined at Melissa's urging. The weekend hiking trips to state parks outside the city where I could lose myself in nature's quiet wisdom. On a personal level, I'd begun the slow, cautious process of rebuilding a relationship with Amanda. Our first meeting after the lobby incident had been awkward, tense with unspoken history and lingering distrust. We'd met at a coffee shop, neutral ground, and spent most of the time dancing around the elephant in the room. "They're gone," she'd finally said, staring into her latte. "To Arizona. They didn't even say goodbye." I'd nodded, unsurprised. "Did you expect them to?" She'd looked up then, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. "No, I guess I didn't." A pause. "Does that make us terrible daughters? That we're not surprised our own parents just Left? The question had hung between us, heavy with implications. I considered it carefully before answering. I think it makes us honest. And I think honesty is the only foundation we can possibly build on, if we're going to try to have any kind of relationship moving forward. She'd nodded slowly. I'd like that. To try, I mean, if you're willing. I hadn't said yes immediately. Instead, I'd set boundaries. Clear, firm boundaries about what I was and wasn't willing to offer. Financial support was off the table. So was emotional caretaking. We would start as equals, or not at all. To my surprise, she'd agreed without argument, and over the weeks that followed, she'd actually respected those boundaries. Our coffee. Meetings became weekly, then twice weekly. We talked about work, her new job as an assistant in a real estate office, my promotion to creative director at Thompson Media. We talked about childhood memories, re-examining them through adult eyes unclouded by our parents' manipulation. And gradually, tentatively, we began to rediscover the connection we'd had as children, before money and manipulation had poisoned it. Today, as I prepared for a dinner party at my new apartment, a larger place closer to downtown with a balcony overlooking a small park, I reflected on how far we'd both come. Amanda was bringing her new boyfriend, a kind-eyed high school history teacher who seemed to genuinely appreciate her for who she was, not what she could provide. Melissa and her fiancé would be there, along how, with Tyler and his husband, and even Carlos, who had become an unexpected friend after the lobby incident. Need any help? Amanda called from the kitchen, where she was arranging a cheese board with surprising skill. I think we're good, I replied, placing the last wine glasses on the table. Thanks for coming early to set up. She looked up, a small smile playing at her lips. Thanks for letting me. The simple exchange held layers of meaning only we could fully understand. Acknowledgement of how far we'd come. Appreciation for the new relationship we were carefully building. The doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of the first guests. As the apartment filled with friends, with conversation and laughter, with the warm sense of the meal I'd prepared, I found myself observing the scene with a sense of wonder. These people were here not because they needed something from me, not because I could solve their problems or pay their bills, but simply because they enjoyed my company, because we added value to each other's lives through mutual respect and genuine care. This, I realized, was what family was supposed to feel like. Later, as we lingered over dessert and coffee, the conversation turned to future plans. Melissa and her fiancé were buying a house. Tyler had been offered a position at a prestigious agency in New York. Amanda and her boyfriend were talking about moving in together. What about you, Rachel? Melissa asked. Any big plans on the horizon? I considered the question, thinking about the travel brochures I'd been collecting, the cooking classes I'd signed up for, the photography portfolio I was slowly building. I'm not sure yet, I answered truthfully. For so long, my life was defined by what others needed from me. Now I'm learning what I need for myself. Carlos raised his coffee cup in a small salute. That's the most important journey. As the evening wound down and guests began to depart, Amanda lingered, helping me load the dishwasher and put away leftovers. We worked in comfortable silence for a while, the kind of easy quiet that only comes with genuine connection. I've been thinking, she said finally, closing the refrigerator door, about what you said that day in the lobby, about family. I paused, waiting for her to continue. You were right, about all of it. She leaned against the counter, meeting my gaze directly. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it, to see you. The simple acknowledgement brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Not from pain or lingering hurt, but from the profound relief of finally being truly seen by someone who shared my history. I'm still learning what healthy family looks like, I admitted. We both are. But I think we're on the right track. She smiled, a genuine expression untainted by the calculation or envy that had so often colored our interactions in the past. Me too. After she left, I stood on my balcony watching the city lights, thinking about the journey that had brought me here. From the crushing betrayal of the Hawaii vacation to the final confrontation in the lobby, from financial exploitation to hard-won freedom, each painful step had been necessary to reach this place of peace. My phone buzzed with a text from Melissa. Dinner was amazing. You're amazing. So proud of how far you've come. I smiled, typing back a quick thank you. As I slipped my phone back into my pocket, I realized that was the difference. The people in my life now celebrated my strength rather than exploiting my vulnerabilities. They added to my peace rather than disrupting it. They gave as much as they received. In the quiet of the spring evening, With the scent of blooming jasmine drifting up from the park below, I finally understood what I had been searching for all along. Not the approval of people incapable of giving it. Not the love of those who only knew how to take. Not the validation of a family that valued me only for what I could provide. What I had been searching for was the courage to stand in my own truth, the wisdom to recognize genuine connection, the strength to walk away from relationships that diminished rather than enhanced my life. And perhaps most importantly, I had been searching for the understanding that family isn't defined by blood or obligation or shared history alone. True family is built on respect, on mutual care, on the recognition of each other's inherent worth beyond what can be given or taken. As Dallas sparkled below me, I felt a deep sense of homecoming, not to a place, but to myself, to the woman who had always been there beneath the weight of others' expectations, to the strength that had been forged in betrayal and tempered in truth. Family, I had learned, wasn't something you were simply born into. It was something you created, choice by choice, day by day, with those who proved worthy of your trust and care. And sometimes the most important family member to honor was yourself, your needs, your boundaries, your inherent right to be valued for who you are, not what you can give. Standing under the vast Texas sky, I made a silent promise to that self, to protect her, to listen to her, to honor her worth. Because in the end, that was the most valuable lesson in this journey, that coming home to yourself is the first step in building a life where others can truly meet you, not as a resource to be drained, but as a whole person to be cherished. Justice had tasted sweet in that lobby confrontation, yes, but this quiet certainty, this hard-won peace, this life rebuilt on my own terms, this was sweeter still. This was the real victory. Not exposing their betrayal, but transcending it. Not punishing their selfishness, but freeing myself from its grip. As the stars emerged one by one in the darkening sky, I smiled at the simple truth that had finally set me free. Sometimes walking away is the only way to truly come home to yourself.